All right. Well,
All right.
welcome everyone to the our webinar on safe harboring rules for solar projects. I'm Alan Bontais, VP of Sales at Harvest Solar. I'm here with Ken Zabara, our Director of Commercial and Industrial Sales. Our producer behind the glass at the Harvest Studios here is Jennifer, and she's going to be watching for any questions that you guys might have and put in the chat for us. But we are going to be talking about a tax issue today. So a real quick disclaimer before we jump into it. We're solar professionals, not tax professionals. That said, we've spent a lot of time in looking at tax law, oftentimes more than your accountants. So allow us to kind of point you in the right direction, but rely on your accounting team to verify the accuracy of our statements. So yeah, lots happened this year. We call the solar coaster.
Yeah.
But a lot's happened this year with the new administration and some legislation around tax credits for solar. In particular, the investment tax credit, or the commercial tax credit, some people call it. And one of the things that Ken is going to really give us a good look at, because you've been at Harvest how long?
Over 13 years now.
years.
Yeah.
Ken can talk a little bit about the history of what's going on, and unfortunately things won't be the same going forward. But Ken, talk to us a little bit about ITC and the tax credit and your experience over the last decade.
Yeah, so I've been here with Harvest and in this industry for over 13 years, and primarily doing medium scale commercial. Not much residential, not much big utility scale, but primarily in the middle on a lot of farms, a lot of commercial businesses. And it's over the years it's changed a lot, some good, some bad, but the tax credit from my perspective has always been there. And early on, it was kind of necessary to kickstart the industry and to get us to grid parity and to get us to a point where solar was as cost effective or more cost effective than other sources without the tax credit. And so in some ways we've achieved that, and we'll talk about that a little bit today. But even if we have achieved that, if you can take advantage of the tax credit while it's still here, then obviously you should do so. But because I've seen the history of this and there's just different aspects to think about, because think about, say, 8 years ago, if you had a 30% tax credit versus, let's say, a year or two from now with no tax credit, your return on investment may be similar or better now, because at that time when you had your 30% tax credit, electric rates were lower, project costs were higher, different things come into play. So you got to think about it big picture. It's not just solar tax credit is here now and it's gone tomorrow. Right. There's a lot of variables to it.
You kind of threw out 8 years as an example, but when you think back, in 8 years we were in a Trump presidency, right? Yeah. And this tax credit existed then, right?
It was phasing out, and Trump extended it to keep it at 30%. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then so a lot of what the conversation's been around changing this has been about the IRA, right? The Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, and how that's where the ITC came from. But the ITC existed before that. The IRA just strengthened it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
The IRA kind of added to it, changed it a bit.
Took it back to 30%, gave us some adders.
Yep.
That didn't exist before.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, there's been some additional incentives the last few years, but the changes right now in terms of overall return on investment, not specific to the tax credit, but big picture, it's not like we had a good industry and now it's being taken away. It was a little extra good for a couple of years, and now we're going back to what it was a few years ago, and still good. And
so then a couple of months ago, the One Big Beautiful Bill, HR1, had several tax credit initiatives in it, but the ones dealing with solar then got rid of the residential tax credit completely. And that's at the end of this year. If the system's not installed, the residential tax credit goes away. But that was not the big tax credit. The big tax credit for solar was ITC. I think now is probably a good time let's dive into after One Big Beautiful Bill. Then we have an executive order. And the executive order said to the Treasury, from the President's Treasury, go back and reevaluate the safe harbor rules. And I think that's probably we're spending a lot of our time, the rest of this webinar is talking about how those rules changed,
Right.
right? So yeah, we've had ITC, IRA strengthened it. Now we're phasing it out over the next couple of years and some changes to how we safe harbor that. So my next thing on my notes is talk about three paths and talk about the residential tax credit being gone, which it is. But there's three paths to still being able to keep that credit, right? The first one, it doesn't phase out until the end of 2027.
Right.
So our customers here at Harvest most of our projects are gonna fall in that category. Which
Yep.
is what? They just have to be, they're complete.
Yep. So, I mean, we're going to get into
Yeah.
details and deadlines and different scenarios and paths, but you're right. The easiest and kind of baseline is to say, if we can avoid a lot of these, we can avoid a lot of these intricacies and deadlines and details if we're just built by the end of 2027.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That I think right now, sitting here in 2025.
And I should say complete, not built.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sitting here in the end of 2025, looking more than 2 years ahead, most of the harvest projects, that's where they're gonna fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the Treasury's clarification of safe harbor then broke out the old safe harbor rules into projects under 1.5 megawatts AC and projects over 1.5 megawatts AC.
Yep.
And so again, now we're talking under 1.5 megawatts AC. A majority of what Harvest does and our customers ask for us didn't seem to really change a lot,
Right.
right? I mean, you still have that project complete by the end of 2027. But the old safe harbor rules, remind me, Ken, the old safe harbor rules was a 5%. They had to own 5% of the equipment.
Right. Essentially,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So start a project, own 5% of the equipment, and that tax credit was safe for 4 years.
And frankly, it doesn't, that aspect on the under 1.5 megawatts doesn't matter a ton unless you're looking at future projects
Right.
several years down the road. But for projects that you're moving forward on under 1.5 megawatts, for the most part, will be complete by the end of 2027.
So we're looking out at projects that we know we want to complete, but we're not going to complete before the end of 2027. That's the only ones that really have any concern with safe harbor rules as they apply.
In terms of wanting to safe harbor a tax credit for a project that will not be or won't necessarily be complete by the end of 2027.
Sure.
We have good examples of scenarios like that where I see on the screen hog barns or turkey barns. You know, we work with a lot of farmers, for example, that have multiple sites and multiple locations and multiple opportunities, where let's say they might have 15 sites and 15 potential projects, and we're doing 1 or 2 or 5 sites this year or next year.
Yeah, every
like
year
that.
they just do a few more sites. Yeah.
And so that's those types of scenarios, or manufacturing facilities with other locations. You know, those types of facilities are going to have we'll have these conversations and they need to be looking at the safe harbor,
Right.
You know, to safe harbor a project that you can identify the specifications and locations and things of now, but not necessarily build it or complete it by the end of 2027.
Yeah, if you have a single project, easiest path to start it and complete it. If you're under 1.5 megawatts AC and you're gonna go past 2027, then we want to safe harbor that tax credit. And we want to safe harbor that tax credit in 1 of 2 ways. Either the 5% rule where you have to have a project and a plan and make a down payment, or satisfy the physical work test. I don't see that one being used that much on projects under 1.5, because once I physically start, the timeline past 2 years out just isn't going to be practical. You're not going to start a project and then go back and stop for 2 years until you can pick it up again.
Right.
Yeah.
On that scale.
On that scale, I think most of them are going to be safe harbored under the 5% rule.
Yep.
So yeah, that was actually it was a bit of a gift. Projects under 1.5, not a lot of change from what we saw before.
So the physical work test may not come into play very often on 1.5 megawatts or smaller, but if we did, or as we get into the larger projects, remind me or coach me on the definitions of that physical work test.
So the physical work test has to be one of a couple things. It's physical work on site that is solar specific. Okay. So it can't be clearing, permitting, that type of thing that are not necessarily solar specific. What their expectation is to satisfy the physical work test, you're doing something leading you towards solar that is kind of, there's no going back from, right? I found posts in the ground for solar array. I've put in roads, concrete pads, ordered inverters that are long lead time items, things like that, where there's likely not going to go back once you do that. Satisfies the physical work test, and that's important on big projects because big projects do not qualify for the 5% rule anymore.
Yep. So now you can't just safe harbor it with your 5%.
Right.
You've got to perform the physical work test, right, and continuous progress.
Right.
And by the sounds of it, what you're explaining, you can't move dirt or something simple that's not, something simple that's not irreversible. Or
Right. There's some definitions, like I can't put a road to the site, but if I build a road in the site around then it qualifies.
Yeah.
I can't clear trees, but I could do something as simple as pounding posts to satisfy.
Yeah. And as a reminder of the disclaimer that we're not tax experts or tax professionals, and similar to a lot of the people on the call, we're still learning about this and educating ourselves about it. But with that understood, tell me about what you were telling me this morning about agrivoltaics and grazing and things like that.
So I was on a webinar just like this one, and they were talking about agrivoltaics. So if agrivoltaics and grazing sheep is the example they used, is part of your solar plan. So you've got that as part of your financials, right? You've put in their description that grazing is how you're going to do vegetative control or a source of income for you, or you get a vegetative plan. Something as simple as planting that area with the proper vegetation, it matches the physical work test. If you had sheep and you needed a well to water the sheep, and that's the only reason you needed the well, putting in a well would satisfy the physical work test.
Yeah.
So there are options that, and we just want to chat with anybody that is looking for those options and look at the site with you and look at what your plans are and what the future is and help you navigate through that. So yeah, we kind of jumped into projects over 1.5 AC, and that 5% safe harbor is no longer available for those projects. We have to be physical work test. And we have to be physical work test has to be satisfied before July 4th of next year. So there's not a lot of time, right?
And when you're talking about a project of a couple megawatts or larger, and you have to begin construction in 9 months from now, give or take,
at the very least,
the development and engineering and contracts and things like that from, essentially from now till July, that's you're pretty well there.
Yeah.
It's going to take that much time to be able to get on site.
And that's why I think having those conversations and a little creativity on how that plan is structured, because we may not be able to have a plan or any permits or be on site, but we could have the ground planted with vegetation by then easily.
Yeah.
We contract with the local farmer to plant that before the end of this year, even.
Yeah.
And avoiding some things.
So we positioned ourselves intentionally to and work with different suppliers to be able to, for example, pound posts with a really short lead time.
Right.
But even if there was only a 1 week lead time, you still have lots of engineering and procurement before that.
Where are the posts going to go? Do you have permission to pound a post? Do I have a permit to pound a post? Do I have a design? And you back that up. And
exactly,
you're right. We're sitting on a time right now is when we need to be having those conversations.
Exactly.
So let's before we go too much, it just gets so wrapped up and confusing that I just want to go back and look at those 3 phases one more time. The one options, the first paths. Yeah, the first path. Just complete it before the end of 2027.
Mm-hmm.
Easy to do on a lot of the projects, even large, some or community solar size project or something like that could easily be done before the end of 2027. If not, or if you have multiple jobs and you want to look at maybe extending that timeline up to 4 years, then 5% rule or physical work test on projects less than 1.5 megawatts. And if the project is greater than 1.5 megawatts, the only option is to satisfy the physical work test before July 4th of next year.
Yep.
Okay. And when we do that, and when we safe harbor, the one big beautiful bill did not touch those adders, right? So the 30%, the energy community adder, those are still options as long as we safe harbor that credit. We're safe harboring the credit and the adders.
Yep.
Yeah.
And those are 3 paths to secure this tax credit, not 3 paths to execute a cost-effective solar project.
Right.
And what I'm getting, I've been open with my customers and with you that we want our customers to benefit from this tax incentive. We want our customers to meet these requirements and benefit from it, but I don't want it to be I don't want it to be implied that once this tax credit is gone, a solar project no longer makes sense.
Oh,
These projects with no tax credit, many of these projects will pay for themselves in 5 or 6 years on a 40-year life. These projects are going to make sense for a long time.
Right.
So, I know I've been open with you about that and just wanted to.
And it's and that is so much to do with the price of solar and how much it's come down in the last 15 years. During this time when we had this incentive, it did exactly what the incentive intended it to do. Right. The incentive was meant to get the industry a jump start. It did that. It got to the point where now it really stands on its own well. But at the same time, if I'm going to do a solar project, I want to try to capture that tax credit if I can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Look, we made it to grid parity. We made it where solar is more cost effective than traditional utility power without the tax credit. But while it's here, let's hurry up and take advantage of the tax credit.
Sure.
Yeah.
I got a few notes on things that we should know from a developer standpoint, and Harvest, of course, help you with this. But just a few random things as you move into this. The first thing, and we've hit on it already, is start early. The physical work test is July 5th. Physical work has to have started or before July 5th of 2026. So start early, don't wait. You're either going to run into a roadblock of other projects, you're going to overshoot the timeline, or we can get permitting and that kind of thing done. We good? All right. We document everything. Contracts, timelines for manufacturers, the site work, take photos of the site work, timestamp site work. Because nobody's going to be checking on you and there's no form and there's no way to keep track of it, right? I'm just going to file the IRS and claim that credit. But if I ever do get audited, I want as much information as I can. Right?
Yep.
And then the final thing is just plan for delays. We've always supply chain, permittings, those types of things. I'm not saying don't call us in June of next year, but we could run into a tiny small delay that takes us 4 or 5, 6 weeks over something that none of us have control over, and all of a sudden we've lost our timeline. So plan for those delays. Did we have any questions come in during the?
One more note on that. We're talking about 5%. There's some definitions around this 5%.
Yeah.
And it may be smart, and it's case by case, but maybe smart to talk about, let's say 7% instead of 5% or something like that. Just because if you're trying to safe harbor based on the 5% and then your project cost changes down the road to where that ended up only being 4.5%.
Yeah.
So it may be smart to do 6 or 7%.
Yeah, I've been telling people 10% even. Give yourself flexibility for change.
Yeah.
Right. Because once you've locked in 5% of it, that is the largest chunk of the tax credit you can take, is whatever that satisfies. So there's enough unknowns about what your project's going to look like that bumping that up a little bit for sure is a good idea. Did we have any questions come in? All right. Couple of things then just to wrap up, and Ken and I can to stay on here and chat because we got lots of customer scenarios, I think, that we look at over the next couple minutes. But yeah, when that IRS notice significantly narrowed safe harbor, the accountants in general don't keep up to date on that information. They wait until they need it to learn it. So I take time now, webinars like this, and educate yourself on what that really means, right? So that when you do need it, you've got your bases covered. And then the deadline, and we hit on this, 2026, July 4, 2026. That's it. You cannot safe harbor past that. You can still build a project after that. You can still complete a project before the end of 2027 and still satisfy it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's going to finish after 2027, you have to have safe harbored that tax credit before July 5th, 2026. On July 4th, 2026, that needs to be started. So that definition certainly has some questions for people on this call, and we're happy to take your calls and talk to anybody about any questions about safe harboring.
That's the biggest thing I think here is just and hopefully our followers and customers know this by now, but just call us and talk to us about it. We're not going to pressure you into something. We're not going to, force some kind of project. We're just going to have a conversation about what may or may not make sense and what the path forward could be.
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, we and be careful with headlines. We see over and over, especially right after this came out, so many articles that were incorrect, right? And it's either AI wrote them or somebody wrote them that really just were looking for a word count, didn't care about the accuracy. This is what we do every day. And like I said in the beginning, we're not accountants, we're not your tax advisors, but we're in this every day, and we're happy to point you in the right direction. So
yeah, a lot of headlines of solar tax credit gone.
Right.
When in reality, it's solar tax credit going away, but and still fine when it is gone.
Right.
Yeah.
One of my favorite headlines, we got 4 minutes here still, but one of my favorite headlines the last couple months was USDA to stop funding solar generation projects.
Yeah.
Huge news, right? They had a press conference and all kinds of articles, and there was hardly any funding of generation projects from the USDA anyway, but it was a great headline.
Yeah.
But it meant just about zero.
Yeah.
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 All right. Well, if you, Ken, if you're good, I'm good. Jennifer, you're good.
Do we need to, I think most people know how to get a hold of us if they need to. Otherwise, do we have I guess go to harvestsolar.com.
Harvestsolar.com. Yep. Is probably the easiest way. You can find all of our phone numbers there. Forms to go directly to us. Look at some of the information we got on there, but that's probably, you're right, the best contact information. Harvestsolar.com to start. Oh, we have a question.
Yeah, let's check the chat.
Let's check the chat here a second.
Yeah, FIAC.
So yeah, we have a question. We'll just start from the top here. FIAC.
I'll scroll up. I don't know if that is the top.
Oh, is that the top?
Here we go.
Let's see. All right. For projects that qualify under 1.5 megawatts completed before the end of 2027, can this include upgrading existing systems with batteries, adding capacity, and does this qualify for the 30% tax credit? So if I understand the question, the solar project is going to be complete before the end of 2027. It could be an addition, it could be a battery, or it could just be new construction, right? All of them qualify. In fact, battery projects, standalone battery projects, are not sunsetting with the solar tax credit. That tax credit is still good until the end of 2030. So if it's only battery, not a concern to safe harbor at this point. If it's additions, if it's new builds and complete by the end of 2027, they all qualify for the tax credit, in my opinion, and do not need to be safe harbored because they'll be complete by then. FIAC, how do you see this affecting our timeline? Want me to?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll take reprints next.
Okay. FIAC is foreign entities of concern. there is some concern and not well defined on what FIAC is and whether you can meet FIAC. So I hate to be vague about this, but I have to be a little bit because we don't know, right? But we do know that we can avoid any FIAC concerns by starting a project in 2025. So projects under 1.5 megawatt started in 2025 with the 5% rule. Maybe not without, maybe just started in general. Those we can avoid FIAC completely. After January 1 of 2026, we are still waiting for a definition of FIAC. And we've been told recently that that definition may not come until the end of the year. So we may be operating all of 2026 kind of as a guess in the blind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we saw that after the IRA, where we were working and trying to work in the blind. But the biggest thing right now to talk about FIAC is we've still got October, November, December, get a project started, no FIAC concerns.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. REAP grants. John Freeman asked, hi, John, what is the status of REAP grants? So REAP grants, from our perspective, we do a ton of REAP grants. All day, every day, we talk to grant writers and USDA about REAP grants. And first of all of any project that's been obligated, that's been officially awarded and received a letter saying you've been awarded this grant, we're holding this for you. It is that money is not going anywhere. It's not pulled back. We are seeing those get funded. That money is flowing, so that the REAP grants that have been awarded are being paid, and we do not see any concerns there. REAP grant applications that have not necessarily been awarded or denied, and future REAP grant applications are very much up in the air. And we talk to the USDA, oh gosh, almost daily. It probably is daily between other people at Harvest. And the USDA doesn't really know much either. And they've got some meetings actually this week and next week that hopefully are going to give us some guidance on this stuff. But new applications and pending applications are just a big question mark right now. But the good news, like I said, is that the REAP grants that had been obligated and had been awarded contingent on the construction completion, those are getting paid out and not being pulled back.
The thing I've heard most recently about REAP is they don't have a score sheet yet, so they don't know how to score. They haven't created an application, but they're supposedly taking applications starting October 1. So probably October 1 probably isn't realistic, but soon we will be, and send us a message. We'll be happy to keep you up to date. All right. Well, thank you again for everyone for joining us. Don't hesitate to call and ask questions. Get a hold of anybody in the sales and marketing department at Harvest Solar, and we're here to help you through whatever questions you have.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.